Welcome to the Fintech Founder Journey podcast, where we explore great fintech products, great fintech businesses, and great fintech leaders. I'm your host, Mike Scott, and I'm also the co-founder and CEO of Nona Digital, an expert firm that accelerates product development for fintech and blockchain scale-ups. In today's show, I'm joined by Damir Ćuća, hopefully I pronounced that right,
Perfect.
CEO and founder of Basiq. And we're going to be talking about open banking and his journey of moving from a services business to building a leading fintech product business. Today's episode is sponsored by Nona Digital. Working with us to create or accelerate your fintech product means you get access to our expert product teams across design and engineering that have been building products together for a very long time. You get the benefit of a studio that is big enough for no key person dependencies to exist, but still small enough so that you're always close to one of the principals. And you get the benefit of our reusable component library, which basically means that we're often able to build your product faster than anyone else could at a comparable standard. As one of our clients said, Nona is the type of business that paints the back of the wardrobe, because if you want to be the best, that's the sort of thing that you do. To get in touch with one of our principals or myself, head over to nona.digital and book a call directly. And now onto the show. Today, my guest is Damir Ćuća, who is a very impressive guy. Damir spent 12 years running and building a services business where he picked up a lot of experience, insight, and capability around what it really takes to build great products. This led him to his current focus today, where he made the move across from a services business to a product business, something that's not easy to do. And this current focus is as the founder and CEO of Basiq, which is an Australian open banking platform enabling developers to build innovative financial solutions. They provide secure access to customer-consented financial data and powerful APIs that uncover valuable insights. Basiq has got a team of over 50 people today, and they're growing really fast. They provide a bridge between over 100 banks and 150 fintechs, and they've helped over 1.5 million Aussies to securely share their financial data on their platform. They've raised multiple rounds of funding from the likes of Salesforce, Plaid, NAB Ventures, and just this week announced another round with Visa for an undisclosed amount. Damir holds 2 master's degrees, one in design computing and the other in IT management. And on top of all of this, Damir has got 6 kids between the ages of 3 and 10. I mean, it's incredible. Welcome, Damir. It's really great to have you on the show.
Absolutely excited to be on the show.
Awesome. I just got to say, I'm amazed you're awake and actually conscious, having 6 kids in your life. I'll refrain from any jokes because I'm just sure you've heard them all, but I just want to say that's really impressive. Cool. So look, before we even really get into it, just for the listeners, just remind us all, what is open banking and why is it so important?
Oof. I've got a long and short answer of that. I'll try and
Give
find
us the short one.
I'll try and find the one in the middle. Why is it important? Because it's your data, and your data this data itself is incredibly valuable, and it's valuable, but also on the other end, it's incredibly insightful as well. So this data, in terms of that you have, and when we talk about data, talk about your financial data. So think about when you log on to internet banking, think about the list of your accounts that you see, the balances. When you go into those accounts, think about those transactions. So transactions and accounts are incredibly revealing. They paint our financial picture. They also paint our preferences of how we like to shop, where we like to shop. It also identifies where we are in our life journey as well. So it's incredibly valuable, and it's also very insightful. And I think that itself is what we kind of provide the ability to do, is we provide the ability for consumers to share that data with third-party applications. And these third-party applications are effectively kind of like the unlocking mechanisms that provide an abundance of innovation that enable consumers to ultimately better manage their finances, be in control of their finances, get access to finance, and also to have kind of what we kind of feel is a much more kind of financially, less burdensome kind of like life by being able to unlock that.
And I think just for some of the listeners that don't know what open banking is, I mean, Damir's just explained it better than I could. And I think the thing I just want to double down on is that it's the consumers get to choose whether they share that data. And I think that's the big difference. There's no kind of mining of data. It's an opt-in technology, right?
No, correct. And just to kind of paint it from a practical picture, what open banking really is, open banking is a series of APIs that provide, customer consented access to financial data. So Think about like, and it's almost like, I'll just leave that one out.
No worries. Cool. Okay. So now that we got that out the way, that's great. Let's start at the beginning. So you're running a service business, most likely dreaming about having a product. Most of us that are in services businesses are always thinking about product businesses.
The grass is always greener, yes.
Yeah, but you're actually one of the brave few that have made the jump. What catalyzed the move to get into a product business and to drop the services life? Talk to me about that journey and what sort of brought it all on.
Yeah, cool. So I think it's like I've been, I think I started programming and tinkering with code since I was 13. So I've always loved to build stuff, and I always had a huge passion in electronics. I used to build these electronic devices. So I kind of consider myself as a creator. And I think the fact that I've got 6 kids kind of keeps going with that. I just keep creating. So I think so from that point of view, it was like I knew early on. I started my first business when I was 23. And the reason why I started is because I wanted to create. I wanted to build software. That was it. There was no other purpose, vision, mission to the business besides I just want to build software, and I think I can do it better than everybody else. So I kicked off that journey towards professional services, and didn't know much about business. I actually didn't know anything about business. I felt like I knew a lot about tech. I obviously know a lot more now than what I did back then. And kind of I went through this journey, and kind of we picked up really good customers, and business got bigger and better and more complicated and all of this. And, kind of fast forward, I think like it was 12 years we actually did that. And we had like some of the top Australian companies as our customers. We had a lot of innovative companies as well. We worked across a multitude of different industry segments as well. And I got tired of building software for other people. And I think that's the one part that kind of resonated in me. I think the other part was that halfway through the journey, I think like 6 years into the business itself, I was like, okay, I already made the decision I wanted to have this product. And I felt it was a constant struggle. Like, we identified what the product was going to be. And then it was kind of this constant struggle of like, how much time to invest towards product. And then you've got existing customers they have to please as well. So it was just, I felt there was this, constant thing we had to kind of like battle with. And it wasn't until, finally kind of business was quite successful, and decided, I was like, okay, it's time to kind of like move on. It's doing its thing. I sold off my share and kind of started Basiq.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, being in a services industry, I can relate to a lot of that stuff, and it takes a lot of guts, and it takes a lot of, I guess, vision, right? Because it's a very, very different way to exist, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So, you guys have been going since 2016, but open banking was still very new in Oz then, or possibly not even actually in effect. I mean, we can get into that in a minute. But it wasn't even a thing, right? It was actually before open banking was a thing. What did Basiq look like before open banking became a real thing? And I guess a second question to that for the Australian listeners is, how does Australia's current open banking system and framework compare to the more developed open banking frameworks in other parts of the world? So like just that whole process of starting a business before there was a framework, through the framework, and now what does that framework look like?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting when I entered this market. I don't know, incidentally enough, even in the services business that I had, we didn't have one single customer who was in financial services. We had customers in operations, in warehouse procurement, even like we had gambling, like, high-end wagering, kind of high transaction, kind of like volume things, but never financial services. So I actually went into it with completely open mind. And I think that was actually one of the strengths, because one of the things that I found for people that have been ingrained in financial services is I kind of feel like they've been clobbered the whole time by this thing called a regulator, and you can't do this, don't do that, there's a penalty for this. Whereas I'm coming, fresh eyes, engineer, anything's possible, let's just kind of build it. So I think that helped, because I think if I was in financial services and tried to do what I'm doing now, I probably wouldn't have done that, because I'd probably think, it's too hard.
It's so right. I mean, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to share something. One of my earliest guests, she's a very successful founder, lovely, lovely woman. And, I asked her what traits she thinks are most important for a startup founder. And she's the only person who's ever said to me that she thinks naivety is a really important trait. And this is a PhD, very smart woman. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, honestly, Mike, if we weren't so naive, we wouldn't have tried half the things we tried that actually led to success. Thinking back now, I would never have done those things because I was so naive. And she was like, actually, I think that naivety is a massive strength. And it's a similar thing to what you just said, right? It's like, I can build this, everyone else is wrong. I'm just going to give it a crack.
Not?
And why not? Yeah. So please go on.
No,
I love that.
I agree. There's another expression where they say ignorance is bliss. And I think, from that point of view, it definitely helped because then and when I kind of made that transition from services over to product, I looked at one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of sink my teeth into something, and it had to be, there was a few things I discovered for the journey. One, it had to be something I'm quite passionate about. Two, it also had to be something that was going to make some kind of impact. I want to create something that's going to leave some kind of like lasting impact. And three, it has to be kind of fun as well. So I think that those are three things that I kind of like looked at it. And when I looked at it from a problem definition, I was looking, well, what's a big problem that I can solve? And one of the things that I realized was that this thing that we called money, how it was transforming at a phenomenal pace. Like money used to be something that we carried in our pockets. Money, our dashboard in terms of how wealthy or how much we could spend is we had this thing called a wallet, if you remember those. Sometimes it get really thick because we put all those cards in there and we open it up and that's how much money we could spend. And that just started disappearing like really quick at a phenomenal pace because it all became digital. But what really happened was that physical form of what we call money actually transformed into database records. So there was all this data, now called money, it's sitting inside some database. And to a software engineer looking at that data, it's like it's a dream. It's like there are so many things that I could do with that. And I think that's where that's where the kind of I saw that kind of transformation. And then also I guess from a personal level, being a migrant that came to Australia, the typical kind of migrant story, not a lot of money, kind of went through the kind of financial pedestal. I felt the pain of not being able to make smart financial decisions along the way, and kind of putting my engineering lens on through that. I'm thinking I can fix this. I can make this better. And the whole kind of notion behind Basiq, the company that I created, was how do we actually open up this thing called money, this data? How do we make it available for API services so we can encourage army of engineers out there in financial services and fintechs to leverage this data to create new solutions for consumers. And I think that's where we that's kind of the entire kind of premise of Basiq. And then as we went through that, we went through this process of there wasn't actual APIs that banks made available. All the banks kind of did a really good job of kind of locking it in, kind of wrapping their arms around it and saying it's my data and I'm not going to kind of make it available. So we had to kind of set that free. So we had to kind of effectively what we had to do is we had to reverse engineer all of the internet banking websites that the banks have that expose their internal API, and we ended up plugging into those APIs, and then we created a really nice, beautiful API that enables developers to actually integrate with that, and that itself has been one of the key kind of catalysts for the success of the fintech ecosystem, because then all of a sudden fintechs can tap into that data and they've got a level playing field between them and the banks. Because
it's almost like fintechs have made APIs famous and cool. APIs are not new, as you know. They're very old. They've been handling billions of transactions for a long time. But all of a sudden they're like cool and they're known, and you have this like API first business model. And it's kind of like fintech is really just, it's this incredible utilization and network of APIs. And as a developer, it must be quite fun to watch that, because you would have been interfacing with APIs for many, many years. And all of a sudden it's like a common business term now.
Oh, it's great. I mean, the best thing about an API is that you only have to worry about the API design. You don't have to get involved in the UX. So it's,
spoken like a true engineer, spoken like a true developer.
Should we use React? Should we use that? It's somebody else's problem. We just give them the beautiful API. So
I love that. I'm gonna record that and send it to my business by itself, because obviously we have designers and developers, and that's such a quintessential developer statement. A lot of devs would be pissed off with me because they do care about design, but it's like, it's got to work amazingly. I don't care if anyone has to use it.
So, that's right. So
I love that. Go for it.
Yeah. So during that kind of like period, when we kind of made the and if I can just kind of digress just a little bit, it was kind of quite interesting kind of going for the journey of kind of product and service. In service, it's very easy. The problem's already kind of been defined. Somebody will come to you and say, I've got this problem. I'll say, great. They've already done an assessment on their end. They know it's something important. It's just a matter of kind of cost, budget, making sure you've got the right partner. And then you do that engagement and you kind of move on. In a product kind of led business, it's a little bit different because you've got this, hypothesis of, I think there's a problem that exists. And then, then you're kind of like, you're trying to validate, you're trying to work out, is this real? Is it just me? Or does the whole world have this problem and so forth? So, and there's no doubt about it that there's a big kind of leap of faith. And everybody says, kind of test it out. It's like, yeah, test it out. But proper tests, you'd want to test a lot more than just ask the first or second guy in the street. It's like, hey, would you use this if I had it? So you definitely take this kind of like big risk, and you have to try and kind of, you definitely have to have an open mind in terms of, when you take something to market, then you got to be able to kind of like roll with the extra punches, so to speak. So I think for us, it was like when I decided that this is the problem that I wanted to solve, and I wanted to build, this API platform that enables developers to build kind of innovative fintech applications. So it was definitely a leap of faith, and the ultimate test came when we built the MVP. And I was like, okay, well, I need to find customers now who's going to use this. So, and I thought, well, fintechs will use it. And the number one place in 2017 was Stone and Chalk, and it still is. Like, it's one of the main kind of fintech hubs. And I was like, cool, I'll just get a hot desk over there, and I'll go over there. And I remember it was this. They used to be in Bridge Street in Sydney, and being Stone and Chalk, they had these little chalkboards, and they'd write the businesses' names. So we had this huge. So when I called them, they would already set up this little chalkboard. I have my landing site up, and they wrote basic.io on there. And I remember kind of going to reception, and the lady's kind of walking through, and she's like, this long communal table, and she's like, you're going to sit here. And I look, and there's like a fintech to my left, fintech to my right, fintech opposite me. And then she's introducing me, and I'm like, great, awesome, thank you. And then as she's introducing me, the company on the left goes, hey, we checked out your website, we want to talk about your API. I'm like, awesome. The second one on the right's like, me too. I was like, yeah, we really kind of need it. And then the third one's like, yes, as well. And I hadn't even sat down, and I thought product market fit.
Market fit, man. I was going to say,
and
like,
that was it,
that's amazing. I mean, look, you've experienced that, and I'm sure you know how important that is. But I mean, that is just so rare. That is so rare that happens, right? It's usually the other way around. So, like, if you're listening to this thinking it's that easy, like, I'll build it and then people will just tell me they want it. That's not a common story, man. Let's be honest about it. But
it's not.
but I love that, like, product market fit right there.
That was it. Yeah.
So look, I love that. That's a great story. So I mean, that's a sort of a good time to speak about your investors. So I know that your sort of let's call it PR strategy is not to talk about the quantums of investment, which is an interesting strategy, and we've spoken about that offline. But the names that you've got on there are public, and they're big. You've got Salesforce, you've got Plaid, you've got now Visa announced last week, you've got NAB Ventures. I mean, these are big names. And I guess my question around this is, especially in the fintech space now, maybe it wasn't like this when you were raised originally, but it's the capital markets are going crazy, right? I don't want to make it I don't want to be flippant, but if you've got a half decent idea now, you'll raise money pretty easily. But the right money is difficult, and the right partners are difficult, and the strategic advantage of the right investor is a whole play to and of itself. Talk to me about, number one, how you think about strategic investors. Like, what does that mean to you, and how did you think about that? And talk to me, number two, about how you got these global leading names to come into your product. Don't be humble about it. Like, what do they see in you? What is it that they're so excited about that they're rushing into Basiq?
Yeah, look, I think, it's there's been different kind of like factors, but I'll give you just one kind of underlying kind of framework, and something that I've always kind of believed in. And I learned this for professional services. Like, I learned the importance of trust, like how important it is, like, to do trust. And I was brought up in a world where nobody gives you money just like that. There has to be some kind of element of trust, so to speak. So I remember when, professional services, there was no investors. We had to kind of be cash flow positive day one, and you have to kind of like do this. But products are a lot longer slide. There's a lot more investment. There's a lot more kind of growth you have to kind of achieve and accomplish. You're building a business from scratch, so to speak. So I think it's one of the things that at first I knew that I was going to go down the VC path. I knew that was going to be important because just the nature of product development. And I felt incredible amount of awkwardness of the concept of being able to knock on a stranger's door and saying, "Can you give me money?" And I was like, it's like, who are you?
Just from a cultural perspective, just because it
yeah,
wasn't
I
something
just
you
thought it
used
was just like, it's just a strange concept. So one of the things that I did was actually, before, when the idea kind of came about, and I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I actually went and spoke to the VCs, the ones that I thought were really kind of going to be important. And I kind of go in, I was like, "Here, I want to build this, I want to build that." And they're like, "Okay, well, how much money are you looking to raise?" I'm like, "I'm not looking to raise anything." And they're like, "Well, why are you here?" And I said, "Well, I just want to meet you. Like, I want to meet you, and I want to kind of keep you in the loop of the journey." So they're like, "Okay." So I did that with a few. And then what I did was I actually started building the MVP. And what I would do is I used to send like a newsletter out to them. I used to say, "Hey, I just did this," or "Hey, and next time I'm going to do this, and that's what my next plan is." And then I'd send them a newsletter saying, "Hey, I just did X, Y, Z as well." So what I was doing was I was actually building a trust relationship with them.
Yeah.
And they were in the journey the whole time. And if I miss a newsletter, they're like, "Damir, where's the next newsletter? Like, give me the newsletter."
Amazing.
I'm like, "Okay, cool."
Yeah.
So I kind of send that. And then when it came time to raising capital, I said, like, "Hey guys, it's time. I built up an MVP. I've got some customers." They're like,
They already knew you. Yeah.
"Damir, we're here. Like, please, let's talk. How much do you need?" It was a very different kind of conversation, so to
Amazing.
speak. And
Yeah.
I think and just to answer the second part of that is, in terms of the investors, one of the things that I kind of realized was that investors, like, there's capital everywhere. There's money everywhere, and you can have good deals and bad deals and so forth. But one of the things that I wanted to do was make sure that it wasn't just capital that they were bringing in, that we're also bringing other things, like whether it's co-development of helping existing products kind of expand, or whether it's distribution. So I think that was also really important. And I kind of, as an engineer, reverse engineered that and kind of thought about, well, who would be the optimal ones to have. And so I created my hit list and I started working on it, one by one. And even with Plaid, when I kicked off the business, I sent the founders, they were at an early stage as well. I sent them an email. I said, "Hey guys, I'm doing this in Australia. I think one day we'll be able to work together. I can see a world where we can bring, connect Australia and US together." And like, "Hey, amazing. Great to hear from you." And that's it. And I just kind of every now and then I'd send them something, and then it was time to invest. I just reached out and
I
said,
just
"Hey
love
guys."
that. Yeah.
So that's it. It's about relationships, right? So.
I just love that. It's such a good lesson in humility, openness, and weirdly confidence as well. Because you weren't cagey about it, and I'm not going to talk about it. It's a secret, and I'm not going to, you were actually saying, "Hey, look, I'm doing this, and I've done more, and I've done more, and I've done more, and I'm showing you traction, and I'm showing you growth."
Just
and there's a very
trust.
strong, it's building trust, and it's showing confidence, in quite a subtle way. You've actually answered one of my questions, but I'm still going to ask it just to be really clear. Is that when I saw Plaid as an investor, my immediate reaction was, "But surely they're a competitor."
Mm-hmm.
And then, you've just answered the question now, and I did a bit of research, and it seems as if they invested in you. I guess they are a competitor kind of, but they invested in you to bridge their markets and the Australian markets. Is that true and correct, or was it a little bit more nuanced than that?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Look, I think it's the same thing with all of them. Every single just about all of our investors are businesses of their own. They've got their own platforms, their own software. They've got their own engineering teams. Yes, they can build what we build. There's absolutely no doubt about it. So I think it's like. So from that point of view, it wasn't about that. It was about kind of the bigger picture. It's not about the world is a big place. It is there's a lot of kind of continents to kind of tackle as well. You can't do everything all on your own. And I think by the time you get around to it, maybe the competitor's already beaten you to it. So I think kind of taking a bit of a kind of open kind of perspective on it, it just kind of made sense. So yes, even though they're doing something similar of what we do in Australia, the environment's very different. US open banking is very different to Australia open banking. So, they've got very different problems to tackle. I know when we kind of talk with them and we kind of do alignment, and I remember the first one, I was like, so when you guys going to work on the inside products, and when you guys going to do this deep kind of data analysis, they're like, "We're just trying to solve the ability to just even return back account balances." And I'm like, "Why is that a problem?" Then I realized I've got 10,000 banks in the actual US, and they're going to connect to all of them. I was like, that's, just solving that one little problem for them is very deep. But for us, there's 100, and the customers here want more. So we have to kind of build more of those other kind of products. So yes, it's similar, but not the same. And it definitely becomes very kind of complementary.
Yeah, that's such a good example of how different territories can just have completely different problems and at different scales. 10,000 banks to connect to versus 100 banks just creates a whole different set of priorities, right?
Very different.
So when we were talking, something that struck me as equally impressive but quite surprising is you seem to do everything as much as possible in-house. I mean, to the point of, just for the listeners, Damir set up they've got an office in Belgrade in Serbia, and he literally took him and his 700 kids and wife and went to live there and set up the engineers, built the culture, like got everything going. Like he was physically there with his family, got that set up, moved back here. Everything that you guys do is in-house. If I remember, you pretty much don't
Correct.
outsource anything, which is cool because you obviously have a very, very high standard and you want to keep that. But I'm interested to know, like, you're a scale up, like you're not even a startup anymore. I mean, you guys are flying, you're growing, you're big, you passed that 50-person mark, which is a very strange number of people,
Yeah.
How are you balancing this? How are you sort of being so across everything, but at the same time not creating a bottleneck by being so across everything? Like how do you manage having such a close contact to everything, but not getting in the way of everyone and everything? Talk to me about like your philosophy on that.
Yeah, look, I think it's like, and if I just kind of take, let's say, offshoring as an example, I remember in the professional service business, I tried offshoring. So, that was a really kind of interesting experience. And one of the things that I found with offshoring between two separate kind of like companies is that, and don't forget, we had businesses outsourcing work to us, and then we would kind of, we actually did it for a little while. We'd kind of offshore to someone else to get a bit more kind of like manpower, right? Just to kind of put that. But one of the things that I realized for that type of engagement was that the two businesses were two very different directions that they're going. So, they've got their culture that they're trying to build. They've got their own vision of what that company is going to look like. I've got my vision and my culture that I'm building. And they're two separate things. And I found that you can make it work for a period of time, but as they kind of start to better define where they're heading and the others start to define where they're heading, it becomes a lot harder. So I wanted to, and the reason why, when I looked at it, kind of like the reason why we went to kind of Belgrade, it's kind of where my heritage is from, was one of the reasons. But the other one, kind of was, the very obvious one was definitely kind of cost. Engineers are very expensive. And the third one was also, I wanted Basiq to be a global business. This wasn't about just this beautiful kind of island called Australia. This was about kind of creating a global business. So I knew time zone, wherever time was going to be an issue earlier than later. So I thought I might as well make an actual problem now. But the reason why I took the family and we went over there is because I realized that the foundations that you lay in the company that first day, the second day, the third, the week, the decisions you make, that's even to the what tables do you buy and like what statement are you saying? You're actually creating culture. You're actually creating the company. That stays forever. And I wanted it to feel like one business. I think that was really, really important to me because I didn't want to have this us-them concept. I wanted to be just, it's one company, it's called Basiq, and this is what we do. So that's why I took that journey, and that's why I kind of built, that's where we kind of built the MVP, and then we kind of came here, and then we'll be kind of building the team here as well. So we're kind of equally split at the moment, but it's one company. So, yeah. and I'm kind of grateful for that.
I love that. It's very true that culture happens whether you like it or not. And I think a lot of people don't realize that is that if you actively build a great culture, that's cool. But if you don't actively build a great culture, it's still going to create itself. Like culture it's going to create itself, and you need to be deliberate about it. So I love that. Something else that struck me when we were talking before is, hiring and retaining and attracting talent is a really big topic at the moment. Good engineers are very difficult to find. If you get them, they're difficult to keep. And it's about culture. But in this case, for us anyway, it's about an engineering culture, which can be quite different to, let's call it, I don't know, a management consulting culture. Right. And there's, you're an engineer and you know what I'm talking about. And, something that I actually, I think I agree with you on this quite strongly, but I never articulated it the way you do, is you said that, you're looking at engineers' CVs all the time. Well, in fact, no, you're not looking at CVs. You're looking at engineers all the time, and you never look at their CV. You said you don't care about their CVs. You said you care really about one thing, and that's their ability to learn new skills. And did I capture that correctly? And if I did, why is that the number one thing that's important to you? That's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, how do you assess for that?
Yeah, it's okay, cool. So, yes, you're right. I'll admittedly, I refuse and I never do. If somebody sends me a CV, I will not look at it. I don't. And it's not, I'm not looking at it because I don't have time. I'm not looking at it because I don't believe in it. And the reason why I don't believe in it, because a CV is just a reflection of what someone's done in the past. It's not the reflection of what their ability to learn is or whether they can pick up new skills. We're in technology, we're in engineering. Things move really quickly. Like, yes, we still write syntax. Yes, sometimes it compiles, it interprets, and all of that stuff. But it's moved a long way. I mean, cloud computing, you've got new languages popping up all the time, new libraries and stuff like that. You want to make sure you've got the competitive edge. You want to make sure you're using the right tools for the right job as well. And that's why, whether somebody has X years of C# experience or whatever, it's less relevant to me. What's more relevant is that they have the willingness to learn, because that's ultimately the most important part. Because can I throw a problem at you and can you solve it? And if you can, it's fantastic. You're hired. And I've proven that out when we started, when we started building the MVP. When we went to Belgrade, nobody was using cloud computing over there. There was still like a very big kind of thing around PHP. Nobody even heard of Golang. And I said, well, I wanted to compile and I wanted to run in AWS, and we're going to build it like this. So I looked for engineers that were interested in learning that. And there were, we had like a lot of people raise their hand because like, oh, get to work on modern technologies. I'd love that. And I'm like, how much do you love it? I really love it. And I was like, well, why? I've been tinkering at home, it becomes side projects. I'm like, man, you're hired. Like, great. Kind of bring them in and you throw the problems at them and they solve it. And, I look at it now where, we're very kind of proficient in the languages that we do, very proficient in the environment that we use, but we're also using, new technologies all the time. And that's why, it's kind of really important.
Yeah, I love that. And this is a good segue into the next question is, asking this question not from a technical perspective, but more from a strategic perspective. What is the tech stack that you guys are generally using? And like I say, I'm more interested in the strategic reasons for that than the technical reasons.
Yeah. God, I can't believe I'm about to say this. But yes, I used to be like the youngest in the company. Now I'm not the youngest anymore. So back in my days, we used to have this promise of Java, and that Java would, you build in Java and you can then kind of run it anywhere you want. And it was really interesting. I think the .NET guys, are still trying to kind of go for that as well. What I've found in reality, and it's just years of experience kind of talking, is that you never end up porting it anywhere else. You end up like, you build it for this, and that's where it kind of ends up staying. Like, even like, look at Docker, Kubernetes, it's still in Docker, Kubernetes, you're not going to take it to something random. So I think it's like, so I kind of learned that lesson. I was like, you know what, like, I've got no problem with vendor locking at all, particularly when it comes to a cloud environment itself, because the further you can remove me away from the underlying operating system, the further you can remove me away from the underlying network interfaces, I'm all that, because I was one of those engineers who used to fix DLL issues because something didn't work because of X, Y, and Z. I remember Com Plus and all this crap. So I think it's like, and also if there's a cloud provider on there that's going to kind of put their hand up and say, we've got this thing called a shared security responsibility model. And I'm like, you're going to take some of the liability for my security? That's fantastic. You're going to take liability for scalability? Fantastic. You're going to take the heat for reliability? Even better. Great. Where do I sign up? Because there's no problems I want to kind of deal with. So that's the kind of strategy that we kind of like went with, is like, if we can outsource, some of that really key infrastructure that's really kind of important, that I don't want to build my engineers with. I don't want to have server racks in my office. Fantastic. And that's kind of what, so we went all in on AWS because of global distribution, because it was the most mature platform. And also kind of in terms of tool and stacks, we use the range of Go and Python for ML type stuff, Node, React, we've got a few experimentations in Elm, that kind of stuff as well. So.
Yeah, cool. So look, I'm conscious of time and this is flown, but I want to ask one question. So, I don't remember if we spoke about this, but just from my research on you, it looks like you're a sole founder. Is that right? Did you found Basiq on your own? So it's interesting, I speak to a lot of fintech founders around the world every day, and the non-technical founders are always pretty much always, without fail, desperate for a technical co-founder or desperate for this amazing CTO. And I get asked on a daily basis, "Hey, Mike, do you know any amazing CTOs for hire?" And I'm just like, "No, man. Like, none of them are waiting for jobs. Like, if you have an amazing CTO, they're definitely not on a job board anyway." Yeah. Just talk to me about your experience of being a sole founder of a business. You've got the technical chops, so like that technical co-founder thing is wrapped up. But what's your experience like? I mean, is it lonely? Like, you've got a great team. I've met some of your team. They're fantastic. You're building a great culture, and I get all of that. But it's not the same. Like having staff, it's not the same as like being a founder. What's your experience been of being a sole founder? Not from a getting things done perspective. You clearly get shit done. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. Just from like an emotional journey experience perspective. What's it like?
Do you have a box of tissues you can send me? So
just stop crying for half an hour.
Look, look, I think it's I think the first thing that comes to mind is each to their own. Look, I think that there's my previous business was an actual partnership, so we had it was a 50-50 split as a partnership relationship, and I learned a lot for that process. And one of the things that I learned is that as a business kind of starts to mature and gets bigger, you can only have one CEO. Okay, someone has to kind of decide on which way they're going to go, and it's not to say that. And one of the things that I've never believed in, I'm not a kind of top-down type guy. I'm not a kind of like, I'm the CEO, so you will do what I say. I have a different view, and I believe in this kind of I think about these concentric circles of responsibility. And I'm like, okay, well, my responsibility includes this. Your responsibility includes that. I don't think that my responsibility is any more kind of important than a support engineer that actually works for us that's fixing a critical bug that the customer needs or the customer will walk. So it's kind of like, I think everyone just has different levels of kind of responsibility, and you should get rewarded based on that. So I think that's kind of how I think. And in terms of kind of like, I think I didn't feel the need because I've got a very strong engineering background, having started the business, previous one at the age of 23. And before that, I had like side hustles. I was doing side projects as well. So I've always been kind of quite entrepreneurial from that point of view. And, where I felt there was gaps, I went and did a uni master's course, and I did that just so I can teach myself. So I think that, from that point of view, I kind of feel like I didn't feel like I needed to do that. And I felt like I had enough kind of confidence and knowledge to be able to kind of go on my own. So I think I've definitely kind of working with a lot of kind of fintechs and startups. We definitely see that it definitely makes sense. If you've got a really strong business person, you should have a really strong tech person, particularly if you're going to be in software. You can't be a business without the tech. And likewise, you can't be a tech without the business as well, because it does require two parts of the brain to work.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's and well done, because it's lonely, it's difficult, it's really difficult, and I mean you're pulling it off with style and with seeming ease. So it's impressive. So look, I want to move to some more sort of. In fact, I'll ask you one more question before we get into the rapid fire questions. So you've got 6 kids. That's intense. I mean, I have 2, and that's intense. 6 kids, 1 wife, that's a lot of people to have to give yourself to. You've got a growing business, another family of 50 odd. You've got a very fast growing business. You've got investors, you've got meetings, you've got people like me that want to bring you onto my podcast. You also look pretty relaxed. You seem pretty chilled. You don't look 75 years old, Cool. So what do you like? What are some things you do to kind of stay sane, to stay focused, to stay calm? Like, talk to me about like habits or routines or principles that you employ to just keep your shit together, really.
Yeah, look, once. So there's no doubt about it. I have to, thank. I said I don't have a partner. Of course, I have a partner. I've got a life partner. And she definitely kind of keeps me sane. And I think that, what she's really good at is kind of setting some kind of ground rules, and I think that they're kind of important. So one of the kind of ground rules that we have is like, I have to be home by 7 o'clock. Otherwise, it's like, it's because the kids are young. What's really kind of important is that we have breakfast in the morning together, and then we finish dinner as a family together, which also means I have to clean up everything afterwards as well. So I think that routine never changes. So it's like, come 7 o'clock, food's all there. We eat as a family, we clean up as a family, and that's important. But come 9 o'clock or 9 kind of 15, everyone's in bed. and I switch off. I switch off, and I switch off in different ways. Yes, I do. Right now, I'll have various kind of binging habits. Right now, my binging habits is gaming. So I'm playing a lot of kind of chess and Catan and everything else kind of online. Like, it's not that I'm watching some kind of show, but that's how I kind of keep myself sane. And I think earlier, also for a long time, one of the other things that I incorporated into my routine was like at lunchtime, I will go to the gym instead of kind of sitting there eating. I'll just be exercising. And I think they're good kind of breaks in the day. And I think that's the part that's the most fun part, is just you need to have those avenues to switch off. And I think if you can kind of switch off for that 1 hour in the day, or if you can make it 2 hours, even better. I think that kind of helps, because you switch off, when you come back, you have to realign, and maybe something subconsciously has kind of worked itself out. And it's like, oh, that was a problem. It's not a problem anymore. I can kind of move forward. So the other things we're just trying to kind of incorporate. And then the other part is, and I think that this is, when we came to Australia, we didn't have much to show for it at all. And we had to kind of build and work, and we got rewarded for us. It's an incredibly rewarding country. And that's kind of when you've seen that, if you try and do right by people all the time, and if you just work hard, things just kind of pay off. And I think that gives me the confidence not to have to worry or stress, because things will just kind of sort themselves out. So just going to keep focusing on the end target, stick to your kind of core values, and just kind of move forward. That's it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you make it sound so easy, but it ain't easy. It's simple. It's not easy. It's about the execution, which, I mean, you'll know all about.
Yeah.
Cool. So I want to move to some more sort of quicker questions, because we're just about out of time. What is your biggest challenge or fear in your business?
I actually don't believe in fear. I'm not scared of anything.
Okay.
I have no fear.
I love that. Okay.
I'm sorry.
I need some of that. I need to hang out. I need to hang out with you some more. What single piece of advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Passion over logic any time of day. Because when things get hard, logic ain't going to help you. If you got that passion, we'll keep that candle burning for a long time. It'll get you through Mount Everest. No problem whatsoever.
I love that. What content are you consuming currently?
Content I'm consuming currently. I am consuming, right now, I'm in the depths of trying to work out how to create the most beautiful, best possible developer experience, because we're an API platform, and I'm really kind of looking into the psychology of how you kind of do that. So, yeah.
What's the last book you read cover to cover?
Good question. Charlie Wilson's War.
Cool. What is something that you're doing in the next 7 days to improve yourself or your craft?
Good question. So in terms of improving craft, definitely kind of focusing on this kind of looking at kind of how do we take the business to the next level from a developer experience perspective. I think that's absolutely key to what we do. And in terms of myself, just being consistent with the exercise.
Love it. So we've spoken about a lot today. I've made you bounce around a lot, which is what I like to do. But of everything we've spoken about, what is the one thing that you would like the listeners to take away from this discussion?
The one thing we live in a phenomenal country. Everything is possible. Trust me, it is. And I think that if you have a little bit of fire inside you and you want to kind of do something, just go and try it. You're better off kind of to have tried and failed, but at least you gave it a go and you learned something from it than to not have tried at all. Trust me, it's a lot easier here than it would be in other kind of jurisdictions. So, and there's a great ecosystem and environment for startups as well. So that would be my one advice to everyone listening.
I love it, Damir. It's been super cool. It's been super inspirational. I feel like I've just taken a lot. I'm still trying to sort of distill it in my mind, but your humility is amazing. Your ability is amazing. And I think the way that you're doing things is you're making it look really easy, which it's not. So I really appreciate the shares. Do you like to be contacted or followed? And if you do, how can the listeners best contact or follow you?
Cool. I don't have Twitter. I don't have any other social network besides LinkedIn. I live in LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest and the best place to actually contact with me.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for making the time, Damir. It was inspirational. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day and sharing your story. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, Mike.
To the listeners, I hope you got some value from today's episode with Damir Ćuća from Basiq. I definitely did. I mean, I've got a bunch of takeaways. I think if I had to pick one, it's going to be around just do it. Like, any action is infinitely better than no action, and just get cracking, and just keep going. I just love it. I absolutely love it. Thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like to discuss your fintech or blockchain product with us, you're welcome to book a call with any one of our principals or myself on our website, Nona.digital. And I'll be back next week with another episode to explore the Fintech Founder Journey.